Okay, so let's talk about how to work problems with moles to particles, and that can go either way. So we can go moles to particles, we can go particles to moles. So remember that particles can be atoms, can be molecules, ions, it can be really anything, okay? So first off, we have to remember that 1 mole is equal to 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd items. And when we use that as a conversion factor, we write it, so as a conversion factor, we're going to write it as 1 mole over 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms or molecules, whatever this is. Or we can write it as 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms over 1 mole, okay? So there's a few things that you need to notice about this. First off, the number doesn't change. So the number 1 stays with mole, whether it's on top, whether it's on bottom, okay? Also, that means that the number 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd stays with atoms, whether it's on top or on bottom. Okay, so we have to, when we're working these problems, we have to decide which one do we want. Okay, do we want to use the one with atoms on top or the ones with moles on top? So to figure that out, you have to find what your goal is in the problem. Okay, what your goal will go on top. Okay, so say we are looking, the problem says how many atoms are in 7.2 moles of something. Okay, well, what you're given is the 7.2 moles, and your goal is your question. Okay, so when we're doing a conversion factor, we are going to choose which one of these has your goal on top. In this case, your goal is atoms. So the conversion factor that you will use has atoms on top. So we will use 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms over 1 mole. Okay, so once you figure that out, you will then just simply multiply the conversion factor by your given. So I'm going to say the conversion factor times 7.2 moles. And if you notice, the word mole cancels with the word mole, and that leaves us with atoms and our numbers. So then all you have to do is put this in the calculator. So in your calculator, you will put 7.2 times, open parentheses, 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd power, close parentheses. Your calculator will give you, let me put it in mine. Your calculator will give you 4.3344 E24. Okay, so we may not know what this E means. E just means times 10 raised to whatever the next number is. So raised to the 24th power. So that means this is equal to 4.3344 times 10 to the 24th. So where am I going to round? I'm not going to write this entire number down. So I'm going to go back into my problem. So go back up here and say I have 2 sig figs and 3 sig figs. So I'm going to pick the lower number. So I'm going to round this to 2 sig figs. So that means that the answer to this problem is 4.3 times 10 to the 24 what? Well, the only thing left is atoms. So this is atoms. And then you just want to make sure that what you got, so this is what you got, matches your goal, which is atoms, and so the two match, so you are done. Okay, so let's work another problem. So what if it says how many moles of, let's see, sulfur is in 6.24 times 10 to the 25th atoms of sulfur. Okay, so again, we have to figure out what our given is and what our goal is. So your given will be the number. This is given. And your goal will be what you're asked for. So how many moles of sulfur? Okay, so once you know your given and your goal, you can rewrite them if you want to make it clear. So given is 6.24 times 10 to the 25th atoms of sulfur. And your goal is you want to know how many moles of sulfur. So question mark, moles of sulfur. So once you know your goal, you can then tell yourself which conversion factor you need to use. So remember, the conversion factor needs to have the goal on top of the equation bar. So back up here, these are our two conversion factors. Either we have mole on top or we have atoms on top. So we want to choose the one that has our goal on top, which in this case is mole. So we are going to say 1 mole over 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. In this case, it's atoms. Okay, so once we have that, we can start our problem. We're always going to start with what we're given. So we'll start with 6.24 times 10 to the 25th atoms of sulfur, and we're going to use our conversion factor to get to the goal. So our conversion factor is times 1 mole over 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms. This is sulfur, so it's going to be mole of sulfur and atoms of sulfur. So once you have your conversion factor, you want to make sure that your goal is on top. So whatever is on top needs to match up with this goal, and it does. We're asked for moles of sulfur. So once you have that, you can just solve for moles of sulfur. Okay. You can also make sure that the word atom of sulfur cancels with the word atom, because if you divide by the same thing, you're getting rid of it. So atom of sulfur divided by atoms of sulfur gets rid of the word atoms of sulfur. So then in our calculator, we are going to open parentheses and put 6.24 times 10 to the 25th, close parentheses. This is technically times 1. You can choose to do that if you want. You don't have to. You will divide this entire thing by open parentheses 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd, and then we will solve. So let me put it in my calculator to see exactly what it gives you. Okay, so it gives me exactly 103.654485. That's far too many digits. So we need to check how many sig figs we have. I have 1, 2, 3 here and 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to stop this at 3. Okay, so that means I'm going to round to 104. So I have approximately 104 moles of sulfur and 6.24 times 10 to the 25th atoms of sulfur. So that's how you work those problems.